Bethlehem in the land of Judah are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage. When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star that had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary and his mother. And they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Grace to you and peace from God the Father, from Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
You may be seated. I mentioned earlier that this is the day of Epiphany, which is exciting on so many levels. Some people call it the Three Kings Day. It's called a lot of different things. But the central message to the whole thing is that this is the first time that Jesus has been made manifest to the world as something other than just a little peasant boy. He's not just another peasant boy. When the Magi show up, and by the way, that is plural for the Greek magoi, which is a really interesting word that really means Zoroastrianism, which means that they were really priests of, this is one theory, actually the one I subscribe to, so we know it's right. The Zoroastrians were a group of people that were scholars. And in their day, this was like the big religion of all of Persia. And the leaders of this group would have had access to the emperor of Persia. It was a big deal. These were really scholarly, well-educated people. I mean, a lot of people make a big deal out of the astronomy or the astrology thing, but it was a big deal. And they really knew their stuff. I mean, look back even as far as to the Egyptians. Astronomy was core to the wisdom literature of the time. And for a new star to show up, they knew that meant that something, whatever was happening in the divine realm was reflected here on the earthly realm. And Judaism followed that kind of thinking. Whatever happened on earth was happening in the heavens, and it was both a reflection. So they knew the star meant that God was up to something big. And they wanted to see what it was, because the Zoroastrians, and I don't even know if I'm saying it right, I think I am, but you all don't know the difference, so that's good. They were waiting on a Savior as well. They were waiting for someone to come into the world that was going to be equally as magnificent as everything that the Jewish folks were waiting for and looking for. And so for them to say a Jewish king of the Jews, they weren't talking about someone like Herod. Herod was just a glitch on the radar. If you notice, they didn't pay homage to Herod at all, which would have been a huge slap in the face if you were king of Judah. Or that whole area. Imagine how you would feel if you were king and someone showed up at your doorstep, your castle, and they come in and say, hey, we're looking for the new king. You're not it. Now imagine that you're just a little bit crazy, a little bit paranoid, and a little bit mean. And then imagine what might happen next. Because Matthew's whole gospel paints a whole different picture. I like it because it's like a reality check to the Christmas story. Because Christmas in Matthew's gospel is very dangerous. It is not the sweet little Luke Christmas story that we get, but it's totally different. And they go together well. They complement each other really well. And it's not one or the other. It's both and. So please keep that in mind. When Matthew paints his picture of what's going on, it is a both and with what's going on in Luke. And we'll be back to Luke soon. But for today, these folks show up, and for them, this new king of the Jews is going to be bigger than King David, which was, the superstar of Judaism, because he united the tribes. He's the only king in all of Jewish history that was able to bring all of the tribes of Israel together under one monarch. He was the monarch that centralized the power, the government, the military. He was King David. He was all that. And following him was King Solomon, which you may remember, his son, who was also equally glorious, mainly because he's the one that built the temple in Jerusalem. Now, don't you also find it interesting when the wise men show up, they come first to Jerusalem asking where this baby is. They didn't go to Rome, they came to Jerusalem, partly because the star led them that direction, but it only got them so far. So they landed in Jerusalem. Now, I don't think that's any accident. They were looking for a Jewish king, but it's kind of like, I don't know, how many of you use, I know everyone has used a map, but sometimes maps sometimes only get you so far, and then you kind of have to ask for a little bit of directions. If you've ever been on like leased roads or out in the country, and there's only certain roads that are on maps, and then you get to a certain point, you have to either know where you're going or ask someone for some directions to get to the next point. Well, that's kind of where they were. It's like, okay, where's the leased road that takes us to this kid? And so they said, so Herod consulted the scholars, and well, he's supposed to be born, according to Micah, in Bethlehem. So they kind of said, okay, well, they took off to Bethlehem. And then all of a sudden, it's really interesting the way the text reads this. Go back and read it again sometime. That all of a sudden the star now kind of picked up where they left off and takes them the rest of the way. And not just to Bethlehem, but to this is more like GPS, to the precise location. Your target audience is right there, third house on the right. I mean, that's how precise it was. Like, okay, they knew exactly where they were going. Now, what they did not know was what they were going to find. They knew what they expected, and this wasn't it. Because what they found was a little peasant boy, a little peasant baby. He's peasant because of his parents, who are both peasant nobodies. No one's ever heard of. Remember, she's a teenage pregnancy. No one knew of Joseph. He was just a lowly carpenter from nowhere land. What good can come out of Nazareth? So we have all this going on, and so what they find, it is no surprise that when they get there, this is their experience of this newborn king. God's calling someone, and that's $25 to World Hunger, whoever you are. In a very loving sort of way. World Hunger needs the money, so it's a good thing. Okay, so that's how we roll here. Okay, where was I? Oh, something about the kings. All right, so they show up. Now, they're called kings because a lot of people nicknamed them kings. It never says that scripturally. But they assume that they must be kingly because what the gifts they're bringing are gifts that you would bring a king, and the only one who really have access to this kind of stuff are kings. So that's kind of where they get that information. But I believe, and of course that is also correct, that probably where they came from, they consulted their leader, their king, whoever it was, that, we know there's something big happening because here's a star. And so probably that king gave them, I'm thinking, the gifts and said, you take these, and if he's going to be that big a deal. Because what they knew instantly, and I believe this is part of the epiphany, part of the revelation. It doesn't say this, but everything jumps from the page that leads us to believe that they knew that this Jesus was not going to be just king of the Jews. He was also going to be king of the Gentiles. They knew it, and they knew that was a big deal, and that's partly why they were there, and why they were paying homage. They were getting a head start paying homage to this new king of this whole region, maybe perhaps even all of Persia. I mean, from their perspective, this was going to, I don't think we comprehend what a big deal these guys were. Herod knew it. Herod understood it very well, that this guy was going to be, whoever this baby is, he's going to be a threat. Because within the next two verses, that we don't read this year, thankfully, is what the church calls the slaughter of the innocents. He says, so we have the wise men that take off because they know Herod's nuts. He had a reputation. I'm not being mean. It's a very well-documented reputation for being mean, cruel, paranoid, all those things. And he only ruled by the will of Rome anyway, so he was in a tenuous place in his life anyway. And he was in Judea, and he wasn't even a full-blood Jew. He was, anyway, that's all beside the point. The real point is, they knew that Herod wasn't going to like it. And they knew that Herod would try to destroy this kid because he would perceive him to be a threat, which he was, to power. Even, think about that for just a minute. This baby stood for everything that rich, powerful, mean people hated. Because he was starting out in humility. Rich, mean, powerful people don't like humility. They don't like it when people have a regard for humility. Read the psalm that we read today. Sometime when you get home, that is a beautiful picture of what a godly king looks like. That was the whole point. And Herod was the exact opposite of everything that is in that psalm. The psalm predicted this king who was going to be a lover of the poor, an advocate of the oppressed, people who were marginalized and cast out. And the wise men knew it because he was already born into all of that. He was already born into a conquered people. He was born into a peasant, oppressed people who had no way out of their class. He was born into a system that there's no way that powerful people were ever going to let him into. And Herod knew it, and the wise men knew it. And he was a threat. So the wise men took off. Herod, in the meantime, orders all the babies, and we sometimes say all the boy children. It doesn't say that. All the babies, up to 2 years old, slaughtered, killed. And not just Bethlehem, but the areas surrounding Bethlehem. That's power's response. Because when power gets scared, and when power is already paranoid, power acts out. And when power acts out, and it has enough power without question, without a check, that means more often than not, it turns violent. It's biblical. It's been going on since eons of time. It's in recorded history of every nation of the world. It always happens that when super powerful people get scared or threatened by their own power, they lash out. So where does that leave us? What could possibly be good news in all of this? Well, the good news is, and you're going to think this is just a little bit odd, but it really is good news. Stay with me for just a minute. The good news is that the Magi, people of ancient, the wise men, they had their own experience of Jesus. They knew who he was and what he represented. He really was going to be king of the Gentiles. And here we are, by the way, FYI, all of us Gentiles. That means non-ethnic Jew, okay, just for our purposes today. So that means they knew it. They knew that this Jesus King was going to be something that the world had never seen before, and they were right. Herod knew something was up. He was right. But as far as the Magi are concerned, they went back to their homelands, and we really don't get any more out of that. But we can imagine what they might have told their homeland kings and people, you need to keep an eye on what's going on down here in Judea because something big is about to happen. And it did. Now, where that leaves us is, and you're going to think this is going to sound kind of weird in a way, we are now the Magi, not Zoroastrians. We're not converting to a pagan religion. We are people based on our own experience of Jesus now. We are the wise people based on our experience of grace. And there's no other world religion that puts grace out on a cross. There's no other world religion that says you don't have to do anything for God to love you. There's no other religion in the world that has a God who says, I love you this much and that you're all forgiven even while you're killing me. No other religion in the world teaches, preaches, proclaims this kind of love that comes in the vulnerability of a baby, grows up and speaks on behalf of all the poor, the oppressed, the widows, the orphans, the children, the women, all of the people who have been pushed out to the edges of society. He speaks for them, advocates for them, and ultimately dies for all of them, as well as the oppressors. All of them were forgiven, even the one who drilled the stakes in his arm. All of them. No other religion teaches that. We have experienced it. Everyone in this room now knows in the depths of your heart and your soul that you may be just a little bit less than perfect. I know I'm about a half bubble off. Some would claim a little further. That's okay. It doesn't matter because what we also know in the depths of our heart is even with all this imperfection, whatever it looks like and however it's manifests in your life or whatever, God loves us anyway, in spite of it all. We have experienced that. We now have the message. We are now the Magi that have been sent now to tell and to proclaim and say, you know what? Let me tell you about another God who actually isn't about all hellfire and damnation. How about that? Let me tell you about a God who is counter-cultural. The popular cultural God is all about hellfire and damnation. This God isn't. I'm sorry, I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but this God is not. This God is about love, grace, forgiveness, unconditional love, and that is the wisdom that's been handed down to you and to me and to everyone who's ever experienced these waters in any sort of fashion or form. These waters that washed us clean before we most of the time could even speak the word Jesus. He's already claimed us and already promised to love us. We're the ones who've been sent. We're the ones now that say, you know what? We know not because someone else told us, even though someone may have, but now we have personally experienced the presence of God in our lives. And we have known that even in the depths of our valleys, God reached down for us, didn't forget us. God reached down for us and said, you know what? I'm going to hold you and I'm going to love you, and we're going to make this right together. Amen.
Amen.
May the peace which passes all human understanding keep all of our hearts and all of our minds in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.